Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. This is your legal BFF, Girija Patel. Thank you for tuning in. I am so grateful for every single one of you for tuning in and listening, because this is what Law Chat is about. It's a place for you to be inspired, a place for you to gain some more wisdom and knowledge about your industry, but a place also where you can receive mentorship through storytelling. Thank you so much. Now, I know that before we walk into this next episode, whether you're tuning in through your iTunes or through other form of a podcast, or whether this is on YouTube, I would love for you to share this information with someone else, somebody who is your friend, your family, a colleague, somebody in your community, someone who can really be inspired by this as well and benefit from the information and from the stories that we're sharing with you today. Law Chat is to help the community, is to boost the community, is to inspire the community. And I want you to help me to do that. So thank you so much for that. Let's get started. Hi friends, welcome to Law Chat with Girija. I am so excited to have you here today because yet again, we have another amazing conversation about financials, about money. And we all know relationships of any sort can be complicated and complex. And then you add money or even just only money to that relationship, that can also become pretty hard to handle, if not stressful at times. And so our guest today, Katie Scott, she's an advocate for money management, educating small businesses and owners with a dream of doing more with their money. Founder of More with Money is an educational platform and community for purpose-driven entrepreneurs to learn how to renew their relationships with money and business. Like before we started, I was just saying, I just feel like it's not even new entrepreneurs, it's anybody. Sometimes the seasons are shifting and the money situation shifts as the seasons shift. And our relationships with that money can just change as well. So it's really nice to have that center point and how to refocus and reshift that mindset. So welcome to Law Chat, Katie. I am really excited about this conversation because like I was telling you earlier today, I feel like I'm also in a season where I need to shift this mindset, and I'm sure other people are here with us as well. There's a lot that's going on with COVID and post-COVID. The economy's changed. We're going into all these scary forecasted economy as well. And so it's really nice to have someone that can really help us and educate us on how to have a mindset that is healthy with money, because ultimately we all need it. We need money to make sure we're sustainable in our lives as well. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me a platform to talk about this thing that I love to talk about for too long. So it's a perfect opportunity for me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, and you being one as well, that you've had that experience where you just literally jump into something and, sometimes the business plan comes in afterwards, even though it's recommended to do it beforehand. And the business plan helps figure out the money and those situations as well. But even then, it's still forecasting. It's really not like an actual, experience that you've had right away. And so before we even get into all this money talk, I want to know, how did you get into it, where you are today, where you're educating other entrepreneurs about it?
Yeah, so my journey with money management really started fresh out of college, newly married, starting my new job as a full-time staff accountant at a public accounting firm. And I thought I had it all figured out, like most college students do. I thought I had gotten the degree that I could use, got the job, everything was set. And very, very quickly, I felt like I was in the wrong place, which is interesting because I had worked at this place for multiple years as a college student while I was getting my accounting degree. They taught me a lot. I loved the people and I really loved my job. But when I shifted into that different role and I started doing the accounting work, I felt like something was misaligned, like something was wrong. It wasn't very fulfilling and I didn't know why. I didn't enjoy it anymore like I did out of the textbook, and I didn't really know why. And then the work-life balance was not there. Like I said, I really loved the people at that office, but the work-life balance was completely atrocious, especially when tax season hit. So all of these different factors started to just really get to me. And I started just kind of figuring out, well, what am I going to do if I can't do this? Obviously the thought is maybe I just need to get a different kind of accounting job. But the more I started realizing I really don't enjoy this accounting stuff either, the more soul searching I had to do. So in that meantime, I was salaried and I had bigger dreams for what I wanted to do than what my income would let me do. And so I was doing those typical Google searches of how can I make more money on the side. And I discovered the world of monetized blogging with affiliate marketing and all of that. And that is not where I am today by any means, but it's what got me started. And so I, started a blog that had absolutely no direction or intention behind it and didn't make any money except for when my friend purchased something through my affiliate link, which was very nice of her. But it was a lot of me not having any clue what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to make some money, but two, I felt like I had a message to share, but there was a lot of figuring out what that was. So in that time frame, with wrestling with the accounting job and then kind of starting this thing on the side, we also had just a lot of other stuff going on in our lives and with my husband's career. So I ended up leaving that job, even though I did not necessarily have like a different plan. But I had saved up some money so that I could try to figure it out in the meantime, because I couldn't immediately get another job because we were in flux. So in that time frame is when I started offering bookkeeping services through my business. It started shifting from a blog to more of me trying to run a business. And I started offering bookkeeping services because that's what I knew how to do. And I figured maybe I will like it more if I control my clientele. And I didn't. I didn't like it still. And that's when I started to learn what it was that I didn't like about accounting. And this is not to like shame accounting in any way. Accountants are needed. Accounting is important. That is still a part of financial management. But what I learned was that there's more to financial health, especially as a business owner. Even if you have your bookkeeping, even if you have your taxes sorted out, there's still another step. I like to call it proactive money management. Some people might use the word budgeting to kind of describe what that is, which is a part of it. But it's really just about that day-to-day decision making. And how do I think about money? How do I make decisions around my money? How can I be intentional with it long before it hits the profit and loss statement, which I think was where my disconnect was. I was feeling like I was reporting these financial messes. And by the time I got the reports done and sent back to the client, it was too late to have fixed anything. And so that's where, not that those reports are not important, but that I felt a passion for a different part of the process. So that's what I started pursuing over time with my business, with how I serve my clients. It looked a lot of different ways. It still looks a lot of different ways. I spent multiple years just kind of pivoting and experimenting and trying different ways of serving people. And in that time frame, getting this experience, talking with real people, talking through their situation, seeing what they struggled with. And it's really helped to shape my approach to money management, which, a lot of people think that, my way is different than everybody else's, but I do feel pretty strongly about that statement that I have an approach to money management and money in general that not a lot of people have. And I think it's because it's grown so organically and in responses to real people's stories and real people's needs. So that's like the big picture vision of how this sort of mission with More with Money came about and why I'm so passionate about that proactive side of money management.
That is so cool. And I kind of want to hone in onto that part of what stage, if you could give us some more clarity on where you feel is the pivotal part of the money management stage, not what's going into the, balance sheets at the end of the day or what you're, accounting for and reporting, but at what stage are you where you come in and your methodology comes in?
So, most significantly, I would say it's like as soon as you earn the money, what do you do with it?
Mhm.
Right? It's sitting in your bank. Should it go into savings? Should it go towards the spending? How do you plan ahead for where it's going to go? That's the budgeting side of things. That's where I spend a lot of my time. I do also enjoy, though, as well, the earning of that money. How can I earn money in a meaningful way to me? And so I connect a lot of things back to kind of a bigger purpose, not just earning money for the sake of earning money, because then you find yourself on a treadmill and you're constantly chasing a moving finish line. So how can we be really intentional in the way that we are earning our money? And then how can we be really intentional with what we do with that money so that none of it's going to waste? So you're not just pouring more into the top of a leaky funnel. So that's kind of the area that I exist in and where I like to hang out. And I do love financial reporting. So being able to have a system for how we track all of that and have a system for that portion is still important. But I definitely spend a lot of my time in that. I've earned my money. What do I do with it?
Yeah, and I think that's so true because sometimes we earn money and then we just put it into either our operating account, like our, just our regular checking account, or we'll put a little bit in savings. And I know there's, so many different methodologies out there, but walk me through it. Like, how would you walk maybe one of your students through that or one of your clients through that? Like, what are some of the factors that you look at when you're determining where does this money go?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say, first of all, when it comes to budgeting, a lot of people have learned it in a way that it's more about forecasting, right? It's a lot more about, sit down at the beginning of the month, say, okay, I think I'm going to earn this amount this month, so this is what I'm going to do with it. It's a lot of guesswork, and it's really hard, especially for entrepreneurs, because you have no idea what you're going to bring in that month a lot of times. And so a lot of people are like, well, I can't budget. I have highly variable income. My approach to budgeting, which I didn't invent, it's actually kind of a more old-fashioned approach we've lost since moving to digital money versus having physical cash. It's a lot more about making a plan for the dollars that you have. And so instead of saying like, I might earn $5,000 this month in my business, what am I going to do with it? It's, I currently have $2,700 in my checking account. What am I going to do with that? And then when I earn more money, sort of add that into the plan. That little shift, it's a lot like when, your grandparents maybe did like cash envelope type budgeting, or Dave Ramsey is a popular financial teacher who teaches that as an actual practice to keep up to today. But that's where you're actually cashing out those dollars and putting them in physical envelopes for specific purposes. That shift right there, that's automatically going to make a huge difference in your money. But then how do you make that call? What do you do with it? So for this, I like to point people to the profit first system. It's very popular in the business world, and for good reason. It's a really solid system. I like to adapt it a little bit. I like to break the rules, but I think it's a great place to start. Whether you like pick up the book and you read that, or if you just read some people's blog post synopsis of it, it's basically in line with what I just said, taking the money that you've earned and allocating it to these different sort of virtual buckets. The profit first system teaches having separate bank accounts for every purpose. I think depending on the system that you use, you don't necessarily need that as long as you're organized and not borrowing from it. But really what that system will tell you your business's revenue needs to go to is, number one, it needs to be reserved for profit. This is where the profit first system gets its name. You're setting aside some money that you're not going to spend in advance rather than waiting to see how much you may or may not have left over. So you set aside an amount for that. You set aside some amount for your taxes. So that way you're always making sure a percentage of your income is reserved for that purpose, because you'll always have to pay taxes. You're setting aside how much you're going to pay yourself. And then the remainder is what goes towards your expenses and gets reinvested back into your business. The way that you can do that is really just going to depend on you. Again, the traditional profit first system will teach you percentages. So some benchmark percentages that you can follow for, as just a rough idea of like that pie chart, basically of where your money can go. Profit would be roughly 5% of your gross earnings. So before expenses come out, you set aside 5% for profit, about 15% for taxes, though that can vary a lot based on your situation. 50%, so half of your income gets set aside for paying yourself, and then 30% gets put back into the business to pay your expenses. Again, rough pie chart. Everyone's is going to look a little bit different. You have to do what's going to work for you, but that's a set of rules that you can follow. But really what I would say it comes down to is having a list of where your money does need to go already, where you know that you have expenses coming out. That's information is really going to inform you and help you to realize how much you need. And then making sure, like, do I have enough? Do I earn enough to cover this? Plus, am I able to save for taxes? Am I able to pay myself? Am I able to have someone reserve for just pure profit, which is kind of like a rainy day fund, essentially? Those are kind of the big picture buckets that you want to look for. And then from there, when you're getting into that habit of reserving money for these really important pools of money, like your money has to go towards these purposes for your business to be successful. So it's really a non-negotiable, even though it feels kind of like it is. As long as you're able to start reserving money into those buckets, you can then sort of develop a system, a tracking method, or whatever system is going to work for you in order to get even more granular, even more detailed. I track very detailed, but not everyone is like that. And you'll start to be able to custom tailor a system that works for you. But as long as your goal is reserving money into those pools, that's where you're going to be setting yourself up for success in the long run.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now, back to our awesome conversation.
What tools do you use to become more granular in tracking?
I would say, well, the profit first system with the bank accounts can be a good system. And then some, especially the more like online banks, have capabilities where you can kind of create subcategories within a bank account. And that lets you be really organized. The other option, I use a budgeting tool, a budgeting app called YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. So it's kind of easy to remember. That's my preferred method, and I will sing their praises till the day that I die. I love them. I should have worn my YNAB t-shirt that I actually have.
That's so
it is, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I've like worked with them they've been developing like coaching programs to teach people how to teach YNAB. So I've gotten to be a part of all of that in the past. And it's a great company, great customer support, great missions and philosophies, and a really great tool. It's got a little bit of a learning curve, but they have a lot of educational resources.
How do you spell it?
It's YNAB, stands for You Need a Budget. So YNAB. That's a great program. It is a paid app, but it's worth every penny, and people always earn their money back through their savings. So I really love that. And then sometimes just a spreadsheet will work. I have a free one on my website in the CFO Starter Kit. If anyone really needs one, that is a starting point for that kind of stuff. But it can really be that simple. It can be as simple as a sticky note or a piece of paper where you just say like, okay, if this is the amount that's currently in my bank, this is the balances in my different sort of categories that I want to keep track of. And you can just keep track of that manually. It's just going to depend on what you're going to be able to keep up with, what works for you. And sometimes you have to play around with it too and just do some trial and error. But as long as you are kind of holding on to what was the reason why I wanted to be more intentional with my money, don't let go of it. Keep pursuing it. And just like any other system or tech or anything like that, you have to kind of keep playing around to find what's going to work for you. But once you do, it's so worth it, right?
Yeah. I like that, there's tools out there that we can use for money management. But for the person that it's hard to just keep up with it, how do we shift that mindset? Because keeping up, the execution part can be the most difficult part also. And so and if you do, I don't know if you do also, but do you teach your students on the mindset issues or how do we develop a better mindset with all of this?
That's a big question. That's a
big answer.
Yeah. The first thing that I'm going to say, give yourself grace. A lot of people are really hard on themselves. They're like, okay, I'm going to be better with my money. That's their New Year's resolution. And then, they blow a budget item. They spend a lot more than they think on groceries one month, and it just all falls apart, right? I don't believe that your finances should be some kind of performance game, which is why I don't like that old budgeting method of trying to estimate and then set yourself, you set your spending categories of I'm only going to spend this amount of money on groceries this month, or only this amount on online courses this month, whatever it is that you're talking about. And then if you break that, then you failed, right? That is not a very forgiving or self-loving way of managing your money. It's just built-in shame and guilt. Instead, it's simply just about making a plan and just trying to be intentional, just trying to be mindful about where your money is going. If you find that you're just like throwing money out there and you have no idea where it's gone or how much you're spending, that's actually going to create a lot more negative feelings for yourself and negative perceptions in your head about money than if you knew your numbers. If you know your numbers, you can face it for what it is. You can work with that. That's tangible. But if you let it blow up in your mind, then it's going to turn into a monster, and it's going to become a lot worse than it really is. And you're going to start attributing things to money that it's not really fair to do. Money is just a resource. It's something that's neutral. It's neither good, it's neither bad. But we make money about success or our inherent value or our security or our confidence or our self-esteem. We attribute all of that to money. And so I feel like if you're finding yourself feeling just really icky when you think about your money, that's probably what you've been doing. And so, in my opinion, I really like practical tips that help my mindset as a result. For me, it really helps me to kind of just get it down on paper so I can work with it. With all that said as well, finance is a lifelong journey. So it's not going to happen overnight. You're always going to have to deal with money. If we suddenly don't have money anymore, we have much bigger problems in the world. So finance is going to be something that's going to be there at all times, and your problems might shift. They might look different, but there will always be problems to overcome. And so this is where I also say, like, take baby steps. Just keep it really simple. Don't try to completely dive into something crazy that you're not going to be able to keep up with. If today your only goal is to simply just look at your bank account balance and just know what that number is, that is a huge win. And that is something that a lot of people don't do. There are some people who are genuinely afraid to log into their online banking, and that's dangerous, right? But it's something that can be hard to overcome because you think that that is a measure of who you are or what your worth is or how good you are at what you do. And that's not what it is. So sort of trying to shift that mindset, I think that's probably one of the first really difficult things, is to shed those thoughts. But that's where you're going to start to have a lot more power. You're going to feel a lot more empowered to make different decisions because you see it for what it is instead. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. Like I said, it was a really big question,
No,
but I hope that it helps.
It was really insightful because truly, I think there's a lot of personal success, right? That's attached to the number at the end of the day, the dollar value, the revenue that you're bringing in, the profit that you're bringing in, how many XYZs you've sold, like all of that in the world of business and teaching finances, and even in the most traditional methods from business school, that's what you learn: budgeting, forecasting, and then did you meet those metrics? If you didn't, what happened? And even with like social media, oh, how many followers did you gain this month? Because that's really just a very tangible metric to be able to, compare ourselves to. And I think you're so right, because our perception is based on that. And that was really insightful. But if you have, your students that you're teaching, or other people that you might be talking to, your clients, are there any tangible methods to help shed that old thinking or those mindsets that can be weighing us down from even opening up our app to see our bank account numbers?
Mm-hmm. I find that kind of getting it out. So getting it out on paper in some way, it can't be in your head.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us try to run our businesses out of our heads, and our heads are not always reliable. If you didn't sleep very well, if you've got other things going on, if it's that time of the month, lots of things can happen that mess up your mind.
Yeah.
And so as much as it's important to, value and care for ourselves, sometimes you can't be trusted. And so getting it out somewhere that you can work with it. So that might look like I said, kind of just diving in and working with the numbers. That might look like trying journaling. I'm not much of a journaler, but I've done it in periods where I need it, where I'm getting really lost in my head. I'll do it more out of need than I do as a routine. Maybe I should do it as a routine, but I'm just not there in my life. But when I've had moments where I'm getting like really lost in my head, just writing out what I'm dealing with in here, what I'm thinking through, it turns it into something tangible. Again, it turns it into something that I can deal with. Also talking it out, right? Talking it out with someone that you trust, someone who's not going to shame you. So for me, my husband and I can talk about money, which is something I'm very grateful for. He's also a money nerd. And so that's something that we can talk about when we're both kind of getting lost, and we usually balance each other out that way. Not everyone has that. So if you have a friend, I would typically say try to find someone whose financial life you want to emulate to be able to talk about money towards. For some reason, people who are really bad with money love to give money advice, and you don't always want to listen to that. So, kind of take a look at that. Look for role models that you can speak to, or send me a DM on Instagram and I'm happy to talk. But I love to be just approachable and conversational with people. So just being able to talk it out and just get it out of your head, that's the biggest part. because it swims around, and there's a lot packed on to people's experiences with money and the relationships. It's not just what you're feeling today. It's what you felt as a child. It's what you saw with your parents. It's what you experienced when you got your first job. There's a lot of stuff that's packed onto there. So, maybe we all need therapy, and that is a genuine suggestion as well if you do need to be able to talk. But don't, like I said, I kind of go back to give yourself some grace. Don't expect to fix it overnight, but just get started getting it out of your head, because chances are your head's been telling you a lot of lies about money. And we just kind of need to get it somewhere in front of you where you can work with it and see it for what it is just the thing that you have that has the potential to do so much more for your life. If you can just try to overcome some of these blocks that are keeping you from looking at it. Think about what you can use it for. Think about what it would mean for your life if you had some more control over your money, or if you weren't as afraid of it. And think about what you'd be able to do if you had the resources that you wish that you had. What would your life look like? What would your business look like? How would you be able to help people? And hold on to that. So that's about not a foreign concept, but connecting to your why, to some bigger mission for what you want. It's going to make it a little bit more worth the pain that you have to go through today in order to overcome certain blocks that you might have, certain obstacles. It's going to help you to sort of push through all of that. Because when you have a reason to get over the obstacle, it's going to be a lot more motivating to actually push through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of, following up with that, what are some practical habits that we can literally integrate into our lifestyle to have a better relationship with money also?
I would say, number one, like I've said before, just looking at the numbers, not hiding them, out of sight and out of mind, right? But just getting into the habit of checking it, whether you just have your app on your phone, you just check your balance, take a look at things, even if your only motivation is to make sure you don't have any fraud on your account that day, right? I just had about a month or two ago, I had fraud on my account that I had to deal with, and I saw it. So that's something that's really valuable, especially in today's day and age with how much fraud and scams and stuff can happen on people's accounts. So checking it, I would say like a weekly budgeting habit, no longer than a week, at least once a week, updating whatever your plan is if you have a budget. I would say when you're out and about, or when you're making spending decisions, wherever that looks like, mindfulness is something that's really hard to do, especially if you've always been very reactionary. And you just kind of you're in the checkout line, you see the thing, you grab it and throw it in your cart. So you are kind of a spender or a splurger. I'm a spender. I love spending money, and that gets me in trouble sometimes if I'm not under control. But what you do is when you are thinking about it, sort of setting an intention in advance and being like, okay, I'm going to try to be more mindful before I put something in my shopping cart, if that's the particular scenario that tends to get you, like it does me. So you're in Target and you're just throwing things in your cart, right? So I'm going to set the intention right now. I'm not in Target, but in advance, I'm thinking when I'm in a store next time, I'm going to just try to be a little bit more careful about what I put in my cart. I'm going to try to think through can I live without that? And then so you kind of remind yourself, and chances are a couple of times you're going to forget. You're going to go through and you're going to realize that you filled up your shopping cart again. But if you just keep coming back to it, again, give yourself grace, keep repeating, give yourself time to let it work. That sort of mindfulness on a regular basis of thinking about, why am I making this purchase before you make it, is going to help you to start making better spending decisions. It all loops back to if you're checking that budget that you might have, if you're checking your bank account balance to determine, do I actually have the money to do this? That's really what it comes down to. But honestly, I don't try to create a ton of work. Like I said, I like a more granular system for money management, but it's not for everyone. And there are ways that you can have a more easier, less time consuming. Granted, mine only takes a few minutes a week, but finding different systems for everyone. But I don't try to make money management more than it has to be. I used to have this quote I used to say all the time, where if you make your money your first priority, it'll become the last thing on your mind. So it becomes just something that runs in the background and doesn't haunt you everywhere you go, and doesn't have to be something you obsess over every hour of every day. It becomes something that you have a system for it in place. You feel secure that you know where it's going and you know where it's coming from. And when you need to go visit it, you can, but otherwise you can just live your life and you can be free. You don't have to feel anchored to money all the time. I can go long periods of time without thinking about my money. Mm-hmm. And this is what I do. So Yeah. So again, it's almost a non-answer to your question, but hopefully that still kind of answers the question.
No, it definitely does. It's definitely, I like what you said at the end, is that if it becomes your first priority, it becomes the last thing that you're really thinking about, because it's become so integrated as a habit that it's not something that you're very purposefully doing anymore, because it's just part of your habits now. And so that makes so much sense. I kind of wanted to just really hone into a little one other thing is when you say granular, I also believe like the word budget can be so scary to some people. And so I like that you had the proactive financial management concept as well. But when you're talking about granular, what does that mean? Like, what are some of the things that you're looking at? Or if someone wants to become high level, what should they be looking at?
Yeah. So for the high level, I would say like if we're talking business finances, we're talking about like those profit first buckets that I mentioned before, right? Profit, tax, your salary that you pay yourself, and then your expenses. Those are like your big buckets that you absolutely need. In your personal finances, that might look like, your bills and then your sort of variable spending or your wants. Those buckets might look different just depending on what your life looks like. More granular is really starting to dig down into the specific spending areas. And that just depends on what matters to you to be intentional with. So if I'm trying to control how much money I'm spending on food, I'm going to want to have in my budget specific line items for tracking like how much I'm spending on groceries versus eating out. We used to have a huge problem with eating out. So that was something where we were wanting to try to be intentional with that. So we, drilled that down. Also, my husband, when he goes out to work, he usually buys a lunch because he's like super picky and doesn't like any food. So he always just wants to eat fast food. So we have a line item just for his work lunches so that I can see how much of our money is going towards just feeding him at lunch. So, and that's not something that everyone else would need, but that's something that matters to us, that we want to be able to see what we're doing there. And when I say like a line item in a budget, again, I use YNAB. So what that looks like for me is setting like out of the money in my checking account right now, this is how much is reserved for Michael's lunches. And then this is how much we've spent so far. So this is how much is left. And then when I earn more money and I add more money into that category, it's adding to that balance. So it's kind of like a running balance of how much I've designated for that purpose and how much has come out. So that's what I mean when I say a budgeting line item. So I drill this down for me personally. Every single one of our bills I have separate. So that way I can see like which bills I need to fund in chronological order throughout the month. So that if I don't have enough money to cover the entire month right now, I'm prioritizing the bills that are due in the first couple of weeks versus the one that's due on the 30th, right? I like to do that. So I specifically set aside the exact amount that I need for every single bill that I have coming out. And then I have our general spending funds, like I said, all the food ones. Very similar concept for business. It's just easier for me to come up with personal examples. It's a little bit more general. And then I also do like different savings funds for things that aren't necessarily monthly. So when my dog got sick a couple of years ago, we had to take him to the urgent pet vet's place. And it cost a lot of money for them to tell me that he was mostly dehydrated and had a lot of gas.
Oh
So he did have other stomach problems and it was mostly a symptom of that, but that's more or less what it was. It would have passed if I didn't take him there, but I didn't know. All I knew was my dog was acting really sick. And so it cost a lot of money to discover that. And so ever since then, I have a fund. They're called sinking funds, where you just, put a little bit of money aside every month or so ish, whenever I have extra, into different designated funds for those things that may or may not happen. So yeah, so I'll do this with annual subscription. So I'll save up, like if it's $120 a year, I'll set aside $10 for 12 months instead. And that just makes it a lot easier. And then I'll do that for funds that may or may not happen. Like I said, my dog getting sick, running over a tire with the car. In business, customers requesting a refund. Having a fund for your refunds is a really smart idea. Having a fund for, occasional like seasonal client gifts that you maybe send out, things like that may not happen every single month, but you're going to need money for it. So I call them your inevitables. These are the things that we often forget to prepare for. So building that part into your budget is like taking it to the next level. And it's really going to build your cash flow and your cash power. And I'm a huge believer that the more cash you have in the bank, the more opportunities you have. So that's what I mean when I say that a system can get a lot more like detailed, but it becomes a lot more powerful, and it doesn't have to be difficult to maintain. Like I said, my budget takes a few minutes every week. Part of that is because YNAB is pretty easy to use. It has a lot of like quick budget features and shortcuts that can help me to do that really quickly. But once you get into the habit and the routine of it, it's just setting aside the same amount of money in the same places, more or less, and just occasionally moving things around as you need to. But you'll get to a point where it's pretty routine and you don't stress about it. It's just those initial learning months where you're trying to figure out your own finances and figure out a system that works for you that you can maintain. But that's what it starts to look like. And from my experience, a lot of people really like it when they can get to that point, but it is a journey. And so that's where I just try to encourage people to remember to give themselves grace and not expect that to happen overnight.
Awesome. Wonderful advice coming from you, and some really great tips coming from you as well. So thank you so much. Now, I know that you are an educator, and your website, More with Money, is a great spot to start with regards to developing a better relationship with money. How can others contact you? And tell me a little bit about some of the stuff that you're offering as well.
Yeah. So I am not posting right now, but I am still on Instagram. And so I encourage people to send me a DM on Instagram. I am super approachable. I love having conversations. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Like, we can have a genuine conversation about money. And so that's always a great place to reach me. My email is always a great place to reach me. So I guess my Instagram is at katie.morewithmoney in case anyone wants to reach out and have a conversation. I also have, I've mentioned it in this talk, but the CFO Starter Kit is a free resource that I offer. It's something that people keep telling me I'm supposed to charge for people to pay for it. And I don't believe in that. I believe that these are the tools and the information that every entrepreneur should have access to in order to better manage their money in their business. So it's like a resource bundle that offers you the opportunity to learn more about how to manage a profit first system, how to kind of start a really high level budget in a spreadsheet. It gives you a bookkeeping tracker if you need to do your own bookkeeping in there, but it also gives you other calculators and resources. It'll help you calculate your percentages that you should set aside for profit and taxes and all of that. So that is a free resource that is available on my website. And then I also have, as far as communities go, we talked about being able to talk out your money and reach out to other people. The Financial Legacy Lounge is my community that is in pause, but is coming back either towards the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023, somewhere around there. It's coming back and is a space for just that purpose of just a bunch of other entrepreneurs who want to be more intentional with their money and to really just change their financial legacies, hence the name, and to just do things a little bit differently and not just kind of follow along with the way things have always been or the way other people tell us that we're supposed to run our businesses or lead our lives. So that's where I'm at.
That's amazing. Well, I'm going to have everything in the show notes. And so that way, everybody that's listening can access it. Also, to Profit First, I'll have that as well. Aside from Profit First, a book that I've read, I know a lot of other people might have read already. What is some, maybe like another book or two that you're just like, this is amazing and everyone should read it? Whether it's a business book or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Another book that I do like to recommend, it's not one where I follow the systems that they teach quite so much. There's a couple of activities in there that would be really cool to do as like one-time activities, but it's called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin. But that has a lot of really great principles, like ways of thinking about your money and kind of valuing the time that goes into generating the money that you have and then helping you to create like this motivation to manage it better. It's really, really insightful and really eye-opening. So I do recommend that. It's more directed towards personal finances, but it applies across the board. So that's a really good book. Otherwise, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to read a fantasy novel before I read a business book. So
Yeah. I mean, I think leisure books are awesome and they should absolutely should be part of your regular reading habits as well. So, and then with that being said, leisure, Netflix, or any streaming spot that you do stream, do you watch TV? Actually, that's the question.
Yeah, I do.
What are you currently watching?
I mean, The Handmaid's Tale's been coming out again. I think I'm behind an episode on that. Yeah, we just recently moved. We don't have proper Wi-Fi yet. So my streaming capabilities have been limited. And then when I unpack my books, then I'll be able to read more books. So I'm in a weird spot in life right now. So that's probably the only show that I'm keeping up with right now.
Yeah. I heard it's great,
Detail.
actually. I'm a little nervous to even begin watching it, but
it's super dark. It's super dark and dramatic, but I think there's some really interesting storytelling that's done, but you need a palate cleanser when you're done watching it. But I'm a little bit of a sucker for like dark storytelling, I'm not gonna lie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. I'm going to put everything in the show notes and how to contact you and all of your amazing resources as well. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. It truly is awesome. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Law Chat. I hope this was super beneficial to you. I really enjoyed sharing this information with you today. And I have to ask you for a favor. Like I did in the beginning, I'm going to ask you again, please share this with your community, whether it's a friend, family, or another colleague, or someone else on your Facebook or Instagram or other social media spot. Share this, subscribe, and stay tuned for other episodes coming in so you are always up to date. But then also take another moment and share this episode with your community, because when you share it with everybody else, not only are they benefiting, but also the information that I'm sharing is reaching out to more people, because at the end of the day, we want to rise together with our community, and I can only do that with your help. Now, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that you tuned in, and I want to hear from you as well. So shoot me a DM on Instagram at GVP Law or at Law Chat with Girija. I would love to hear from you. I would love to also hear what other episodes that you would like to hear about, topics that you want to hear about, and also just connect with you. And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, cheers.